Hello everyone, welcome to Psychology 101, General Psychology, and today we're going to be talking about stress and health. So what is stress? Well, stress is this kind of feeling or response that we have to anything in our environment that might be either challenging or threatening. Stress is a process that all of us have experienced at one point in their lives at least. It's a process which we participate in, and it's a process that's driven by, again, objects or stimuli in our environment known as stressors that leads to this experience of stress. And importantly, stress is subjective. All of us can encounter these same obstacles, these same objects in our environment, but could have very different stress reactions to them. So whereas one person might see an obstacle as a challenge to overcome, another person may see it as an overwhelming force that you can't possibly do anything about. So the former would not experience stress, whereas the latter might experience an extreme amount of stress. Brief experiences of stress can be beneficial, especially if it motivates people to try and overcome these stressors. But extreme or prolonged stress can cause extreme health problems, such as depression, anxiety disorders, and possibly even suicidal thoughts and behaviors. The types of stressors that we encounter in daily life can fall into one of four different categories. We have catastrophes, which is basically the worst possible stressors that we can encounter. They often have serious long-term effects, and we often see spikes in heart attacks the day of the catastrophic event. Significant life changes are also stressors that can lead to extreme amounts of stress. New roles, new priorities, new tasks that people are having to deal with can lead to strains in people's ability to cope with stress, and it can especially negatively impact health when these changes are painful, and especially when multiple changes occur at the same time, when you might have unemployment coincide with losing a family member, which may coincide with other major transitions. Other stressors such as chronic daily hassles or just having to deal with low social status or power can also influence health as well through stress. So how do we respond to stress? Well, we have a stress response system in which we react to a stressor in our environment by increasing resistance to threat and harm. We first have our flight or fight response via our sympathetic nervous system. It reduces pain that we experience and increases our heart rate. It gives us the energy we need to be able to react to a situation. Our adrenal glands then produce cortisol, which is also known as the stress hormone, which allows us to plan adaptive strategies to deal with stress. This is more of an extended resistance phase to stress. And then we try and reduce our stress through that second phase. If we're not able to do so, then due to the extreme amount of energy that we're putting out trying to regulate and deal with the stress, it can lead to exhaustion. We do see some gender differences in how individuals deal with stress or how people react to stress. So for example, women tend to focus on social relationships. They become more empathetic under stress. They tend to nurture themselves and others when they're under stress. Whereas men tend to socially withdraw. They use other substances to deal with stress, such as alcohol. They're more likely to become aggressive and less empathetic. So we do see some stark contrast in sex differences in how people cope and deal with stress. So we talked about stress leading to other health issues. This can be actual other biological diseases. So psychoneuroimmunology is the study of how psychological, neural, and endocrine processes affect health. So we do see that stress, amongst other psychological factors, can lead to psychophysiological illnesses. We see that this can be driven by psychological factors such as thoughts or feelings. This can be driven by neurological factors such as the specific brain signals that are being fired in our brain. Or it can be driven by immunology, how much cortisol is flowing through our body, whether or not it actually ends up suppressing our immune system. So for example, individuals who are exposed to a simple cold virus, well, those who are stressed are more likely to become ill as a result because stress hormone cortisol is actually dampening our immune functioning in our body, then it's letting this cold virus in. We also see some links between heart disease and stress. So we can talk about differences between type A and type B personalities, for example. So type A tend to be more high-strung, more aggressive, more impatient, whereas type B tend to be more relaxed, more easygoing. We tend to see that heart attacks have a higher likelihood of striking type A personalities because type A personalities are more likely to experience stress, for example. And that type of personality is associated with chronic stress. So we experience stress all the time. How do we deal with stress? How do we cope with stress and promote healthy day-to-day lives, day-to-day activities? Well, there are a number of ways we can reduce stress. And oftentimes, these different coping mechanisms or coping strategies can fall under one or two different categories. We can have problem-focused coping with stress. That would be reducing the stressors directly, working out a conflict, tackling a difficult project that's been on your mind. There are risks involved with focusing on the stressor directly. It can, at times, magnify the emotional distress that we experience about a stressor, especially if the problem is difficult to deal with. Or instead, we can focus on our emotional reactions to a stressor, the emotional impact of stress. We might try to get support or comfort from others. This is oftentimes used when we can't actually do anything about the stressor directly, such as the death of a loved one. The only problem with focusing on the emotional impact of stress is that you're not actually dealing with the problem. And if it is a problem that you can deal with directly, that's often the best strategy to use. There are other ways of promoting health, such as kind of increasing perceptions of control that you have over either the stressor or your life as a whole. Being an optimist, people who are optimistic, overly optimistic to the point where they're kind of living a lie or living an illusion. Each of these circumstances, people tend to live longer, healthier lives with less stress. And individuals who have strong levels of social support tend to be buffered against many of these negative outcomes associated with stress. What about some other techniques? Well, aerobic exercise has been shown to trigger genes that guard against chronic diseases. It can reduce multiple health risks. It can reduce depression. It can reduce stress, for example. And exercise is often associated with confidence, vitality, and energy. There are a lot of benefits, especially to having a regular exercise schedule that you maintain long term. Sometimes you can modify your lifestyle to try and reduce the amount of stress that you experience on a day-to-day basis. This can sometimes lead to reduced heart attacks. Sometimes trying to relax or meditate on a regular basis can reduce many symptoms associated with stress and can alleviate stress as well. And even getting involved in religious activity can also reduce stress and is often associated with health benefits. Much of the research suggests that it's not necessarily believing in a religion or following a religion explicitly that leads to health benefits, but it's a lot of the indirect factors associated with being a part of a religion, a religious community, for example, that can provide many of these benefits, such as having strong social support, interacting with others on a daily basis, a lot of these other factors associated with being involved with a religion. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for your time and attention, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.